Welcome to Wellsprings of Faith. My name is Father Liias. I'm a Roman Catholic priest. I'm on the staff of St. Patrick's Church in Stoneham, the neighboring community to Melrose, where we tape this program. And our program looks at religious faith and the journey of faith in a person's life and the fruit of that faith in their work in the world for God. I want to welcome, actually I can't say he's a new friend. We've worked together in cyberspace and online, but we never met in person before. I'm welcoming Matthew McDonald today. He's a journalist, and we've done some work together of things I've written, and I read his articles faithfully in the National Catholic Register. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to finally meet you in the flesh.
Likewise.
You are. Flesh. Good. So anyway, as I said, this is a show about your journey in faith. So I know you're from around this area, but go back as far as you can remember in your own relationship to the Lord.
All right, I'll go back much farther than you're thinking. Because I grew up in
St. Patrick?
yes, that's what I was going to do, actually. I grew up in Watertown, just outside Boston. And as far as I can tell, my family have been Catholics for 1,500 years.
Wow.
Now, I'm making that up, sort of.
Yeah.
But if you look at the geography, part Scottish, part Irish. The part of Scotland stayed Catholic. The Irish people stayed Catholic.
Yeah,
so as far as
recently.
I know. Yes, exactly. Well said. So for a long, long time, and everybody I know, that doesn't mean they were all good people.
Right.
But they were Catholics.
Fascinating. Does your family done any kind of, these days people really do a lot more work at family trees and genealogies.
As much as I can. Ancestry.com makes it sort of like cheating.
Yeah.
But when I was in 7th grade, my mother and I would do what she called ghouling. Oh. So we'd go to a lot of cemeteries and a lot of records places.
In Ireland?
Eventually we went to Ireland, yeah.
So you were a Catholic, pretty active Catholic family?
Yeah, church going. My father was a seminarian.
Really? Before
getting married, that's right, exactly. But he was in for 5 years. He was close to being ordained a deacon. Yeah, very serious about it. So we were church going, and
how old is he now?
My parents are both gone.
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to think what generation he would have been.
He was born in 1927.
Oh, okay, that's a long time ago. Yeah.
So he was in the 50s, actually.
50s, right. And so a good Catholic family. Growing up, did you go to parochial school?
No, public school.
Oh, public school in Watertown?
In Watertown till 6th grade, then private school after that, and then off to college.
Where'd you go to private school?
Roxbury Latin.
Oh, Roxbury Latin. I went to Boston Latin.
Did you now?
Yeah, at the public version.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It was private, actually, at one point in its history.
Yeah. Now, was Father Jarvis there when you were there?
Yes, he was.
He's an old Anglican,
I was going to ask you about it.
He's an old friend. We know each other.
Among other things, he was my senior year English teacher.
Oh.
Phenomenal English teacher.
Yeah, he was an Episcopal priest,
yes.
Headmaster of the school
there
as well. So and then where'd you go off to school?
Harvard.
You went to Harvard?
Yep.
What class were you there?
92.
92, all right. Did you live at home? I was going to go to Harvard, but my mother said, "Oh, good, you can live at home." And I said, "No way." So I went to Amherst College out in Western Mass.
As far as you can get.
Far enough that I
still stay in the state.
I still could bring my laundry home, but I wasn't spending the night at all.
I brought my laundry home freshman year, but I did live on campus.
Oh, you did. All right. And back to your childhood. Do you remember, besides just growing up sort of culturally Catholic and religious, did you remember sort of a sense of God in your life?
Yeah, I always believed. I've interviewed a lot of converts over the years, and they have very interesting stories.
Right.
And mine isn't. So it's a turbulent story, because any story of a soul is.
Right.
But in terms of belief, no great questioning or doubts from an early age. I think I just imbibed my parents' faith.
And you survived even college in your faith, or was there some turbulence there?
There's turbulence throughout my life. So every day is turbulent. But no, not in terms of not believing.
Well, tell us about some of the storms, you might say, that assailed your faith, or deepened it very often.
Well, when I was in my sophomore year, there was another student who was trying to get people to become a fundamentalist Protestant,
Okay.
of a particular fundamentalist sect. And nobody wanted to listen to this because Harvard is a very irreligious place. But I was game, so I wanted to kind of get into it. And what I found out was that although I had a sense of my faith, I didn't know nearly as much about it as I needed to. And a friend of mine recommended a book called Catholicism and Fundamentalism by Carl Keating.
Oh, yes, I know that book, yeah.
Phenomenal. It's to this day, it's one of the most important things I've ever read. And it equipped me to debate these things.
Right.
But more importantly, it deepened my affection for doctrine, but also kind of deepened my relationship with Jesus.
Jesus, yeah. I mean, God bless the evangelical world, and which came out of fundamentalism, more kind of contemporary version of fundamentalism. But number one, the love and knowledge of the Bible, and number one, a personal relationship with Jesus. Which, you might ask a Catholic, what does that? We talk more about that way now, but certainly
we didn't,
right?
No.
There's been a real kind of rediscovery of the cornerstone of the Christian faith, which is Jesus, and a relationship with him. But also the scriptures, which is also a relationship. What is it? Jerome says ignorance of Christ is ignorance of scriptures is ignorance of Christ. What we do know about Christ is in the scriptures. Yeah. So you began to really find your faith in a much more coherent and intellectual way.
Yes.
Well. Yeah. And then what did you decide to do with it?
Debate online, which doesn't get you anywhere, actually.
Well, that's one way to proclaim the faith. Apologetics were online, yeah. You were doing that, a lot of that?
Yeah, in the early days of these things.
Was it more arguing with fundamentalists, or was it also just with secularists?
Anybody.
Anybody.
But the more interesting ones are with fundamentalists because you can argue over Scripture.
That's right.
And I find...
At least they have a faith that you can...
Yes, that's right. Kind of a starting point.
Yeah, so starting... And were you successful with the
Never.
Never?
Absolutely never. But actually, it was helpful to me because there's nothing like arguing and teaching, for that matter, to actually learn something.
That's right.
So I think more than having an effect on other people, it had an effect on me. It kind of strengthened my sense of it.
Yeah, I mean, it sharpens. I mean, it sharpens us. What is it? St. Peter says, make sure you know how to make the case for your faith. And a lot of people couldn't. It's a little private, personal thing, but they can't articulate their faith, and they really.
Another translation is, be prepared to give a reason for the hope that is within you.
That's right. Right.
And for the last 12 years, I've been involved in the RCIA program of my parish, which is, as you know, is the Rite of Christian Initiation for adults, which they now call something else, but I have trouble with that.
It's the order of Christian initiation.
If you actually break down both of these terms, neither one is correct. It's not really.
What would you give for it?
Well, Christian initiation means becoming a Christian.
Right.
Most of the people we deal with are Christians.
Yeah.
So that's not really it.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. They were thinking more of getting people baptized.
Yes.
And in fact, the reality is people coming into the church who are already Christians.
Right. It's both, but for the most part, it's people who are already baptized. So having dealt with this for like a dozen years, it's hard for me to go to something else. But
when they changed the name, did they also change some of the process? I'm not as familiar with it, even though I'm a Catholic priest. I just haven't been involved very much in that part of the ministry.
Not that I've noticed. I don't run the program.
Yeah.
I work with the fellow who does. And he said there's some slightly different things about the texts, but in terms of how we do things, it's been pretty much the same.
And are you a teacher in that?
Yeah, or what they call a catechist.
Catechist, yeah. Yeah, occasionally I'm invited to, frequently I'm invited to be a guest speaker at the RCIA.
It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
When I first got into it, I wouldn't have figured out what it was. And it took me a while of doing it to realize what it is. It's partly instruction in the faith, as you would expect, but really it's people giving their own witness to their own relationship with Jesus through the Catholic Church. So therefore, if you know a lot of doctrine, that's great. If you don't, but you have a personal faith journey, you're just as valuable a player as anybody else.
That's right.
And you never know who somebody's going to connect to.
That's right. I mean, these people are obviously on a journey.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, although there's obviously, it depends a little bit on the person. Some people are more intellectually, theologically oriented and really want to understand the faith intellectually, but everyone has a story, and back to the personal dimension of faith and the work of God in your heart and life.
It makes Easter Vigil just unbelievably exciting.
It is.
We're taping this as, not long before Easter Vigil. And
how many you got this year?
We have 3 coming in. For the first time, I'm a sponsor. Even though I've been doing this for a number of years, I've never been a sponsor before. So that's kind of an extra responsibility, if you will. And it's just so exciting to see these people join the faith.
Well, let's go back to you, though. Now,
okay, more about me.
We
I'm
kind of
deflecting.
left you off at sophomore in college. And,
Yes.
But as you said, it was not only did deepen your faith, kind of birthed a part of your life now, which is be an apologist for the faith. I mean, what'd you do after Harvard?
I went to the news business.
When did you feel a sense of call to do that?
I'm waiting for it.
You've been trying it out.
Exactly. I just thought I'd try it for a little while, and it's sort of, for now it's stuck, but I'll figure out what I want to do when I grow up.
Well, what
eventually.
did you do when you did come out of
my first newspaper was in Montgomery, Alabama.
Oh, okay.
Worked for a daily newspaper as a copy editor, which I hated, but I thought if I could be a reporter, I think I'd like that.
Yeah.
So I got a job on Cape Cod working for a chain of weekly newspapers.
Oh.
And I loved it. I went all over the Cape. Cape's a wonderful place.
Yeah.
Beautiful place, but also very interesting people, interesting things going on. I had an incredible amount of credit card debt working there of $3,000, which at the time seemed to me a high amount.
Yeah. Were you single and just?
Single, yep.
Yeah.
And I went to New Hampshire to work for a daily newspaper there called the Union Leader, which is the main newspaper in the state.
Right, very famous paper.
Yep.
Yeah.
And from there, several other news organizations. For a while, I worked for the Boston Globe as a correspondent covering towns outside of Boston for about 4.5 years. And then eventually, some friends of mine and I founded our own newspaper. Don't ever do that. Just if you're out there in the audience, you're listening to me, don't ever found your own newspaper. But it was in the town of Norfolk, which is about 25 miles southwest of Boston.
Right.
And it was a weekly paper, printed on paper. This is back before the...
It's just for the local town?
Local town.
Yeah.
And we made a go of that for about 4.5 years. And eventually went out of business. And did a few other things for several years. I worked for the Knights of Columbus for a while. And then eventually got a job running New Boston Post, which is
where we connected.
That's where we connected.
Right.
It's a news website that covers Massachusetts from a conservative point of view.
Right.
And I've been doing that since December 2016.
Almost 10 years, yeah.
About 3 or 4 years ago, I started freelancing with the National Catholic Register, and coming up on 2 years working for that full time.
Oh, really?
So I've got 2 jobs, New Boston Post and the National Catholic Register.
So you've been always kind of patching together. No wonder you're worried about your debt. Did you finally pay off your college debt?
That was credit card debt that
credit card debt, not college debt.
Yeah, I happily didn't have college debt. My parents were very kind about that.
Okay. And where'd you meet your wife?
In college.
In college. So she's been trucking along with you for a long time then. Yeah. Well, I met my wife the first day of freshman year of college.
First day?
First day.
Oh, neat.
Well, I went to Amherst College, and Smith was the college. I don't know if you dated any Smithies.
No.
They would sometimes migrate on weekends to places like Harvard and Princeton and Yale to look for men, but the rest of the week we had them out there and to ourselves in the Pioneer Valley there. But I met her, and we went together all through college, and I got married when I was in seminary.
Oh, neat.
So talk a bit more about your faith in those years, how that was fleshed out. Obviously, there's a component in your paperwork that emerged related to your faith.
One of the nice things about the news business is when it's not all-encompassing, it tends to be flexible. You work odd hours, so not a lot of people don't like that, but it means you're able to kind of figure out your schedule. So when I was working in New Hampshire starting in 1996, I had a lot of time during the day. And that meant there was a lot of opportunity to go to Mass. Mm. So when I was there, I had been to daily Mass before, now and again. My mother took me during Lent, for instance, when I was in 7th grade and through high school, occasionally during college. But really in 1996, when I started having all this time, and I could go to, say, a midday Mass or 5:30 or 7 or whatever. And at the time, there were lots of churches in southern New Hampshire with lots of different Mass times. And I would kind of go around to all of them. I wasn't particularly connected to any of them, but I wanted to see kind of what they all were like, what the buildings were like, what the liturgy was like. So at one time or another, in the couple of years I was living in Merrimack, New Hampshire, I think I visited almost every Catholic church in the area. And that was a great blessing because at first I started thinking of it as extra credit. Like, God, I hope you're watching this. I'm doing something extra for you. You owe me, to realizing that this is what God wanted me to do, and also what I needed to do. Not everybody's called to do that, but I am, and I just know that now.
And so the discipline of daily Mass became just a central part of your life as a Christian. Catholic.
And one of the things, I think, as you well know, one of the things you learn the closer you get to a practice of the faith is just how deficient you are. So I think I kind of floated along before then thinking that I wasn't as bad as I was. And now I think of myself in terms of what I need to do, what I've done, what I've failed to do, in the words of the Confiteor.
Yeah.
And so I don't think of myself as a great person or even a good person. I just think of myself as someone who's struggling, as St. Paul said, working out my salvation in fear and trembling.
Yeah, fear and trembling. Saved by grace. It is a little bit of a paradox that the closer you do draw the Lord, it's like, I suppose in some sense, it's His light shows up all the shadows in our lives, but it doesn't drive you to despair. I mean, the devil would like to use it to drive you to despair, but quite the opposite. You fall. Remember that Jesus saying to the woman who was washing His feet and with her hair and weeping, and He goes to Simon. You see this woman, he who was forgiven much loves much. Yeah. Somehow, you actually are both aware of how profoundly God loves you, but also your love in return. Paradoxically, because of your sense of unworthiness.
As Catholics, we have that feeling when we come out of confession.
Yeah.
Just this wave of gratitude.
Now, you've got children. How are they doing with their faith, right? How many do you have?
8.
8. You're a good Catholic boy. You're following all the rules.
Some of them.
Well, most of the rules. That's what we say. I must confess, one of the things I regret is becoming Catholic too late. Because I have 2 wonderful children, but I wish I had more. I feel like, it's not just that I deprived myself, I deprived the world. I've got just wonderful children who are really I see them as a gift to God, and they're both deeply committed Christians.
That's great.
They're not Catholics yet, but in God's time.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
My father has a wonderful saying that used to annoy me as a kid. No would-haves, could-haves, or should-haves. We're all living in God's plan.
That's right. And that's right. And that these are the ones that I don't regret it profoundly, but I kind of jokingly say I wish I could have had a bunch more kids.
I'm an only child, and the thought, and when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily think of myself as getting married and having a family. It just wasn't it wasn't against it, but I wasn't really for it. And now I look back and think, this couldn't have happened any other way that it did. And I'm so grateful that it did. So my kids are ages 22 down to 10. 3 of them are in college right now.
I assume your wife's a Catholic, right?
She is. I'm sorry. Yeah.
and was she running college?
Yeah. She's also raised.
So you shared your faith together already in college.
Which, by the way, I marvel at people who don't have the same faith. That must be very difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm impressed by it, actually, because it's difficult enough when you agree on everything.
When you are. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the church in its wisdom and the Bible in its wisdom says don't be unequally yoked. Basically, that's fundamentally good advice in the law. But sometimes the church does allow you, in fact, we have those forms, disparity of cult or mixed marriages that a Catholic has to get permission for. But it doesn't forbid it. Just, but it's a different kind of challenge. Yeah. But so tell me, I mean, so you've been basically in journalism your whole life, mostly. It's certainly the universe of journalism has so changed. I mean, papers are almost obsolete. Yeah. Certainly papers. And so many other means of the whole. So what is good about that in terms of opportunity? What I put it this way: what do you see the opportunities for the Christian faith, which is literally good news? I mean, it's seen as, in fact, precisely your field. Yeah. It's a movement of news. That's right. To proclaim some news. What is this new world perhaps inviting us into, and that's good, and also some of the challenges?
So first I mentioned that the changes have been so profound, it's even hard to remember before them. It's hard to remember when the changes took place, because some of them were sort of gradual.
Yeah.
But to give you one small example, tiny example, I have trouble remembering how I did reporting before being able to look something up on the internet. Because in the old days, if you didn't know how to spell somebody's name, you had to call them. Hope you could reach them on the telephone, or somebody else would know it, or maybe it would be in a reference book. Now we can all just look everything up.
You can find everybody.
Which is amazing. Yeah. One of the neat things is for people who are interested in the faith, it's very easy for them to find out more about it. I once had a project where I was editing a book of writings by a Catholic priest. And this is back around 2000, and there was a quote from Acts of the Apostles that I needed to find the chapter and verse of. So I decided, okay, I'm going to just start Acts of the Apostles from the beginning and stop when I find the quote. Now, wouldn't you know, it was in the middle. I'm so grateful, by the way, because I just went right through.
Yeah, you got to read it.
Which, if you're watching this at home, if you ever get a chance to read Acts of the Apostles from start to finish, it's a fantastic action-adventure story. It's an amazing story just to read, right, even without faith. But of course, if you have faith, it's much better. But this gives you an example. It took me a long time to find this quote. Now we would just do a Google search.
Yeah, that's right.
So when people come to RCIA, for instance, people want to become Catholics, a lot of them have already looked up a lot of the great questions that might have prevented them from joining the Catholic Church. On the flip side, of course, all the horrible things are easily available as well.
That's
so
right.
There's
the bad news.
The bad news. The bad news, other good news. They're all equally easy to find.
Right.
But good news. We're not Minikians. We don't think that good and evil are equal power. So the fact that the good news is readily available is a good thing.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
And I would say Scripture.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I've certainly encountered that where people start. So many people. Start just searching stuff, and they start. It begins a journey, almost all online. Have some of these stories. They never went to church, so it's almost the end of the whole thing. They just basically catechize themselves through reading and all that, and then maybe I should go, especially in the Catholic thing. Maybe I should go to Mass. There's a lot of talk about that.
Let me tell you a story. Yeah. So the guy that I'm the sponsor of, he's 26. He was studying to be online, to be a Protestant minister. And he becomes convinced through reading John chapter 6 and about John chapter 6 that the Eucharist is Jesus. It's not a symbol, but is Jesus. Shows up at our parish one Sunday and goes to the priest after Mass. This is his second Mass. He actually went to another church previous. And says, I want to become a Catholic. The priest gives him to a deacon. The deacon leads him into the RCIA program. He doesn't talk to anybody. He just sits down and we start talking about doctrine, about the Catholic faith. And then a few months later, he's going to become a Catholic on Easter Vigil. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be a lot more of those stories as time goes on. So, what have you enjoyed? I mean, obviously, a good chunk of your work is basically explicitly Catholic journalism. So, what's been exciting about that? How is that nourished? And sometimes, speaking of good news and bad news, how come sometimes I'm sure they're also reporting on bad stuff, things that stumbling blocks for faith.
That's right. So I'll start by saying that the vast majority of the time I've been in the news business has been secular news, not religious, government, politics, but just about anything. Right. So I come from that background, really, of just covering things, just covering anything. When I first started getting in a big way to Catholic stuff, I thought that was going to be quite limiting because it's just one portion of the country, one portion of our existence. It's amazing how many things have a Catholic angle. Politics, we have prominent Catholics doing things. We have government policies that either affect the Catholic Church or Catholic teachings that might affect government policies. Yeah. So, although there are certain things we don't cover, it's amazing how many things we do.
Yeah. It is quite extraordinary how the Catholics are so salted and leavened into our society in all kinds of levels and all kinds of fields. Not always for the good. Sometimes, they're nominal Catholics or they're, Catholics who aren't proclaiming the Catholic faith. But it is fascinating. I mean, most of the Supreme Court are Catholics. Yep. I mean, something like that. And more Catholics in the legislature. And obviously now we have a vice president who's a deeply committed convert Catholic and even uses his faith to articulate policy, which I think is interesting.
Yes, I know.
So
it's a first, I would say.
Yeah. Well, he's a bright guy, and I remember reading way back when. What's the book he wrote? Hillbilly Elegy. I remember reading that, and then there was a movie out, and I was very moved by the whole thing. This was before he became a Catholic. Yeah. Then when I discovered, I remember listening to an interview of his journey into the Catholic faith long before he became a politician. But it was fascinating. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time. So what are some of your projects for the rest of your life? What are some of your dreams with your stuff, given for the gospel, given your field?
Well, a big hope is for New Boston Post, because I think it's a potential force for good in Massachusetts and beyond, in this area, including for faith. Yeah. It's not primarily what we do, but we're certainly embracing it.
Faith angle is often in there.
So I'm very hopeful about that. I think the rest of my life, and I don't know how long that is, maybe I'm going to walk out of here, I'll find out. But I think it's just taking it one day at a time, and conversion is turning toward or turning with. So I just feel like every day I'm just supposed to do that. I'm kind of moved by what Mother Teresa said, and I'll probably butcher the actual quotation, but it's something to the effect of, it's not about the end result, it's about being faithful to God. Yeah. He doesn't require us to be successful, he requires us to be faithful. Right. And if we do the right thing, the outcome doesn't really matter that much.
That's right.
So that's kind of how I feel about it.
I remember one of my favorite quotes from Jesus is, I only do what I see the Father doing. Like the goal of our life is to cooperate with what God is doing. Hopefully the Holy Spirit's guiding us in that. But if we give our will to the Lord like Mary, let it be to me, then you're doing God's will, because he'll do it through you. So, thank you. It's wonderful.
Father.
Blessings. Say hi when you're driving between New Hampshire and the Cape as this neighborhood. I hope you've enjoyed this interview with Matt McDonald. If you're particularly interested in his work, there's a Catholic magazine. You can get it both online and by print, National Catholic Register. And the same with New Boston Post. You can find that is an online newspaper and a kind of more conservative voice in the spectrum of Massachusetts politics, which is needed, I think, at least to balance things out. So blessings as well on you who have watched this show.